Text. Before I tell you what happened, I want you to imagine this. Your own child, the one you raised with love, one day chains you by the neck and calls you worse than a dog. That was my reality, and what happened next will shock you. Stay with me, and if you love powerful stories that teach real-life lessons, make sure you subscribe right now so you never miss the next chapter. The cold chain clanged against my neck as my son pulled it tighter. My knees hit the floor, the rough cement biting into my skin. His wife stood by the doorway, laughing softly as he shouted, "You're worse than a dog." My heart broke into 1,000 pieces, not from the pain of the chain, but from the cruelty of the child I had carried in my womb for 9 long months. The room was silent except for the sound of my gasps and his angry words. He yanked me forward like I was nothing more than an animal. Tears blurred my eyes, but through them, I caught sight of a shadow moving outside the window. It was our neighbor, Mr. Harris. He had seen everything. His eyes widened with shock as he froze in place, watching the horror unfold. And, at that very moment, I realized my son had made the worst mistake of his life. It all began long before the chain ever touched my neck. My name is Margaret, and I am 71 years old. I have lived my life with pride, raising my only son, Daniel, with the little I had. His father died when Daniel was just 10, leaving me alone to struggle. I worked in people's kitchens, washed their clothes, and cleaned their floors just to put food on our table. Many nights, I went to bed hungry so Daniel could eat. I thought I was raising a boy who would grow into a man of honor, a man who would care for me in my old age. But somewhere along the line, Daniel's heart hardened. When he met his wife, Linda, things only grew worse. She was young, beautiful, and sharp-tongued. From the very beginning, she made it clear that she did not want me around. She whispered into Daniel's ears, filling his heart with poison. At first, it was small things. She would complain about how I cooked, saying my meals were tasteless. She would roll her eyes when I spoke and sigh loudly whenever I asked for help. I ignored it because I didn't want to cause trouble. I told myself, she is just young. She will change with time. But time only made her bolder. One evening, I was sitting on the porch, knitting quietly, when Linda came outside. She stood in front of me, her arms crossed, her eyes full of contempt. "You know," she said coldly, "a woman like you should not be living here. You're a burden. Old people belong in care homes, not in our house." Her words struck me like a slap, but I held my tongue. I believed if I stayed quiet, Daniel would see her cruelty and defend me. I was wrong. That night at dinner, Linda dropped a plate on the table and looked directly at me. "Why don't you eat faster? You chew like an old goat." Daniel laughed. My heart sank. I thought it would end there, but things only escalated. Soon, Daniel began to shout at me for small mistakes. If I forgot to wash a cup, if I left the light on, or if I asked him for medicine, his anger exploded like fire. But nothing prepared me for the day everything shattered, the day he wrapped a chain around my neck. It was a Sunday afternoon. I had been cleaning the living room when I accidentally broke one of Linda's precious glass vases. She screamed so loudly that Daniel came running. His eyes burned with fury. "You useless woman," he shouted. "All you do is break things and waste space." I tried to explain, but before I could finish, he stormed out of the room and returned with an iron chain. My heart pounded as he wrapped it around my neck, pulling hard until I fell to the floor. Linda clapped her hands and smirked. Now she looks like what she is, a dog. My tears fell freely as I begged him to stop. "Daniel, please, I am your mother." But he didn't hear me, or maybe he didn't care. His face was red with rage, his hands gripping the chain tighter. And then, just as I thought my breath would leave me, I saw the neighbor's eyes through the window. He had witnessed it all. My body shook with both fear and hope. Because if someone else had seen, then maybe, just maybe, justice could come. And that was the beginning of everything that was about to unfold. The days leading up to that moment were filled with warning signs, but I refused to believe my own child could treat me so cruelly. I remember the first time Daniel raised his hand at me. It was not to hit, But the way his fingers hovered in the air, the way his eyes glared, made me realize he was no longer the boy I had raised. I remember one night when I sat in my room, crying quietly into my pillow. I prayed, God, please soften my son's heart. Please make him remember the mother who carried him. But the more I prayed, the harder his heart seemed to grow. And then came the moment with the chain, the moment that changed everything forever. Because what Daniel and Linda did not know was that Mr. Harris, our neighbor, was not just any ordinary man. He had secrets of his own, and he held a power that could destroy them both. And that night, after seeing what Daniel had done, he made a decision that would shake our lives forever. The chain cut deeper into my skin as my son pulled it tighter, but I was no longer thinking of the pain. I was thinking of the look in the neighbor's eyes. It was a look of both shock and determination. He had seen, and he was not going to remain silent. But I didn't know what he planned to do. And that was the beginning of my son's downfall. The chain rattled around my neck as Daniel finally let go. My throat burned, my body trembling like a leaf in the wind. He spat on the floor and muttered, "Pathetic old woman. You're lucky I didn't drag you outside like a stray dog." Linda giggled, her eyes shining with cruel delight. But what they didn't know was that Mr. Harris, our neighbor, had seen everything. He didn't shout. He didn't run away. He just stood there quietly, staring through the window with a look that made me shiver. I couldn't tell if he was angry or if he was planning something. And in that silence, I realized one thing. He was not going to let this pass. Later that evening, after Daniel and Linda had gone out, I sat on the porch with tears drying on my cheeks. The chain marks were still fresh on my skin, red and raw. My heart was heavy, but I was too weak to even cry anymore. That's when I heard a soft cough. I looked up, and there he was, Mr. Harris. He stepped closer, his tall frame blocking the fading sunlight. He was a quiet man, always keeping to himself. People in the neighborhood whispered about him, saying he had once worked in powerful places, maybe even for the government. Nobody really knew the truth. "Margaret," he said softly, his voice calm but firm, "I saw what your son did today." Shame filled me, and I lowered my head. "Please," I whispered, "don't tell anyone. He is still my son." Mr. Harris knelt slightly so he could look me in the eyes. His gaze was sharp, almost piercing. "A son who chains his own mother is no son at all. Listen to me, this cannot continue. I will not stand by and watch you suffer."
I felt a storm in my chest.
Part of me wanted to protect Daniel, even from his own cruelty. Another part of me, the broken, wounded part, longed for someone to finally step in. But before I could answer, Linda's voice cut through the air like a knife. "Who are you talking to, old woman?" she sneered from the doorway. Mr. Harris straightened, his face suddenly cold. He turned to her slowly, his eyes narrowing. "I was just checking on your mother-in-law. She looks unwell." Linda smirked. "She's fine. She always exaggerates. You don't need to meddle in our family business." With that, she grabbed my arm roughly and pulled me inside, slamming the door shut. Through the window, I saw Mr. Harris still standing there, watching. He didn't look defeated. He looked determined. The next few days were quieter, but the silence was dangerous. Daniel barely spoke to me, except to bark commands. Linda continued her insults, calling me old hag and worthless. But I noticed something strange. Mr. Harris began watching the house more often. Sometimes from his porch, sometimes from the street. It was as if he was waiting for something. And then one night, something happened. I was in the kitchen washing dishes when I heard Daniel and Linda arguing in the living room. Their voices grew louder and louder until Daniel shouted, "You think you can control me? Don't forget who pays the bills in this house." Linda snapped back, "And don't forget, Daniel, that I know things about you. Things your precious mother doesn't even know." My heart skipped a beat. What could she possibly mean? Suddenly, the sound of breaking glass echoed through the house. I froze, clutching the dish in my hand. Fear crawled up my spine. I wanted to run to my room, but before I could move, the door to the kitchen flew open. Daniel stood there, his face red with rage, holding a broken bottle in his hand. His eyes locked on me. "You," he shouted, pointing the jagged glass at me. "This is all your fault. If you weren't here, Linda wouldn't be turning against me." My breath caught in my throat. I backed away slowly, my hands trembling. The sharp edge of the bottle glistened under the dim kitchen light. For a moment, I thought he was going to stab me. And then, there was a loud knock at the door.
Bang, bang, bang.
The sound was so sudden and so forceful that Daniel froze, his hand shaking with the bottle still raised. Linda rushed in, her face pale. The knocking continued, louder this time. Whoever it was wasn't going away. And deep down, I already knew who it was. Mr. Harris. And this time, he wasn't just watching. The pounding on the door grew louder and louder.
Bang, bang, bang.
Daniel's hand trembled as he held the broken bottle, his face caught between anger and fear. Linda's eyes darted from the door to him, panic spreading across her face. "Who's there?" Daniel shouted, his voice cracking slightly. A calm but firm voice answered. "Open the door, Daniel." "It's me, Mr. Harris." The entire house froze. The name itself seemed to slice through the tension. Linda's lips parted, her face draining of color. Daniel's grip on the bottle loosened, but he didn't lower it. "I don't want visitors," Daniel growled. But the knocking continued, steady and commanding. "I saw what happened the other day," Mr. Harris said from the other side. "And now I hear shouting. I'm not leaving until you open this door." Linda leaned close to Daniel, whispering urgently, "Don't let him in. You don't know what he's capable of." Daniel shot her a glare. "Shut up." Finally, with a deep breath, he marched to the door and swung it open. There stood Mr. Harris. His tall frame filled the doorway, his dark eyes scanning the scene. He saw the bottle in Daniel's hand, the fear etched into my face, the trembling in Linda's stance. Slowly, he stepped inside, his presence alone commanding silence. "Put that bottle down, Daniel," he said firmly. Daniel laughed bitterly, though it sounded more like a shaky growl. "This is my house. You don't get to tell me what to do here." Mr. Harris took a step closer, his voice calm but heavy with authority. "No, Daniel. This is your mother's house too. And if you keep treating her like this, you'll lose more than just a roof over your head." For a moment, Daniel froze. His jaw clenched. But instead of obeying, he threw the bottle across the room. It shattered against the wall, glass flying everywhere. Linda screamed, and I instinctively covered my head. Mr. Harris didn't flinch. His eyes narrowed as he looked directly at Daniel. "I've been patient. I've been quiet. But after today, I won't stay silent anymore." The room was so quiet, I could hear my own heartbeat. Daniel sneered. "And what will you do, old man? Call the police? They'll laugh at you. This is family business." Mr. Harris leaned closer until his face was only inches from Daniel's. His voice dropped to a low, dangerous whisper. "Don't test me, boy. I have more power than you think. And if you lay another hand, or chain, on your mother, I will destroy you." Daniel's bravado faltered. I had never seen my son look afraid of anyone, but in that moment, he looked small, like a child caught doing something terrible. Linda's hands shook as she tugged at Daniel's arm. "Daniel, please let him go. He's not like the others. He's serious." Daniel yanked his arm away, but he didn't move closer to Mr. Harris. Instead, he turned his anger back on me. His eyes burned with rage. "You think you've won, don't you, Mother?" he spat. "Bringing the neighbor into our business? You'll regret this." Tears filled my eyes as I shook my head. "I didn't call him. He saw with his own eyes what you did. Daniel, why are you doing this to me? I gave you everything." For just a split second, something flickered in Daniel's eyes. Pain, maybe, or guilt. But it vanished as quickly as it came. He stormed off to his room, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. The house fell into uneasy silence. Linda sat on the couch, burying her face in her hands, whispering under her breath. I couldn't make out the words, but her shoulders trembled. Mr. Harris turned to me gently. You can't stay here like this, Margaret. He's dangerous. I shook my head, wiping at my tears. He's my son. Where else would I go? Mr. Harris's eyes softened, but there was something else behind them, a weight, a memory he was holding back. Sometimes, blood doesn't make family. Respect does. And if he won't respect you, then you need to protect yourself. I nodded weakly, but inside, my heart was breaking. I still loved my son, even as he hurt me. But the more I looked at Mr. Harris, the more I wondered, what kind of power did he really have? That night, after Mr. Harris left, the house was unnervingly quiet. Daniel didn't come out of his room. Linda barely looked at me. I thought maybe things would calm down. But just as I was about to lie down, I heard footsteps. Heavy, deliberate footsteps in the hallway. My bedroom door creaked open. Daniel stood there in the shadows, holding something long and shiny in his hand. His eyes glowed with fury. "You thought you could embarrass me in front of the neighbor?" he hissed. "Tonight, Mother, you'll learn what happens when you betray me." The object in his hand caught the moonlight. It was a metal rod, and he was walking straight toward me. The cold gleam of the metal rod shone in Daniel's hand as he stepped into my room. My heart thudded painfully in my chest. I pressed my back against the headboard, my breath trembling. "Daniel, please," I whispered, raising my hands. "I am your mother. Don't do this." His eyes were wild, bloodshot with fury. "You let that man humiliate me. You think you can turn people against me in my own house." His voice cracked like thunder. I shook my head quickly. "I never asked him to come. He came on his own. Please, son, you don't have to hurt me." But Daniel was deaf to my pleas. He raised the rod slowly, his shadow stretching across the wall like a monster looming over me. My lips trembled with a silent prayer. Then footsteps. Linda appeared in the doorway, her face pale, her hands trembling. "Daniel, stop this madness." He froze for a second, turning sharply toward her. "Stay out of this, Linda. This is between me and her." But Linda shook her head, tears rolling down her cheeks. "You're losing control. You think no one will find out? The neighbors saw you chain her. If you do this, Daniel, if you hurt her again, you'll destroy yourself." For the first time, her voice cracked with genuine fear. Not fear for me, but fear for what Daniel might do to himself. Daniel's grip on the rod tightened. His chest heaved with every breath. He looked from me to Linda, his face torn between rage and hesitation. Finally, with a loud growl, he swung the rod, not at me, but at the wall. The plaster cracked loudly, leaving a deep dent. Dust sprinkled down like ash. I gasped, my hands trembling, my body frozen. Daniel dropped the rod with a clang and stormed out, slamming the door so hard that the window rattled. The silence that followed was deafening. Linda rushed to my side, her hands still shaking. "Margaret, you need to leave this house. He's out of control. Next time, he won't stop." I looked at her, searching her eyes for any trace of kindness. But all I saw was fear. Fear of what her husband had become. "I have nowhere to go," I whispered. "He is my son. If I leave, I lose him forever." Linda's lips pressed into a thin line. She looked as though she wanted to speak, but stopped herself. She turned away, leaving me alone in the room. That night, sleep refused to come. I sat by the window, staring at the darkened street. And there, across the road, I saw him, Mr. Harris. He was leaning against his porch railing, staring directly at our house. Watching, waiting. A strange comfort filled me. Maybe, just maybe, I wasn't as alone as I thought. The next morning was eerily calm. Daniel avoided me completely. Linda served breakfast in silence, her eyes darting nervously between me and the door. Something was changing, though I couldn't yet name it. Later that day, as I was hanging laundry in the backyard, Mr. Harris appeared at the fence. His voice was low, almost secretive. "Margaret," he said, "I need you to trust me. I've dealt with men like your son before. I know how dangerous he can become. But I also know how to stop him. I stared at him, shocked. Stop him?
How?
His gaze hardened. Let's just say I have experience. There are things your son doesn't know about me. And if he continues down this path, I will use every resource I have to bring him down. My heart pounded. Who is this man really? A retired soldier? A policeman? Someone with powerful friends? Before I could ask more, a sudden crash from inside the house made me jump. I ran inside, my legs trembling, and what I saw froze me where I stood. The living room was turned upside down, chairs knocked over, the coffee table smashed. And there, in the center, stood Daniel, holding Linda by the arms so tightly that she cried out in pain. Tell her. Daniel roared, shaking Linda. Tell my mother what you've been hiding, or I'll make you regret it. Linda's face was pale, her lips trembling. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she looked at me. And then, with a sob, she screamed the words that shattered the air. Margaret, your son has been keeping a terrible secret from you, something that could ruin all of us. Daniel's hand flew to her mouth to silence her, but the words were already out. And in that moment, I realized my suffering was only the beginning. Linda's muffled sobs echoed in the living room as Daniel's hand pressed hard against her mouth. Her eyes were wide, desperate, pleading with me to understand what she had just said. Not another word. Daniel snarled, shaking her violently. You don't know what you're talking about. Daniel, I cried, rushing forward. You're hurting her. Let her go. He turned his fiery gaze on me, his grip tightening. Stay out of this, Mother. She's trying to poison you against me, just like everyone else. Linda kicked and struggled, finally biting his hand. He yelped in pain and released her. She stumbled back, gasping for air, tears streaming down her face. This is too much, she whispered hoarsely. Then her eyes found mine. Margaret, you deserve to know the truth. Your son. But before she could finish, Daniel lunged at her again, knocking her to the floor. Shut up, he roared. If you say one more word, I swear you'll regret it.
The room spun around me.
My knees weakened, and I clutched the edge of a chair for support. My son, my only son, was turning into a monster right before my eyes. Just then, the door creaked open. It was Mr. Harris. He stepped inside without knocking, his presence filling the room like a storm. His sharp eyes scanned the chaos, the broken furniture, Linda sobbing on the floor, Daniel looming over her with wild fury. Enough, Mr. Harris said firmly, his voice cutting through the madness like a blade. Daniel whirled around. You again? Mr. Harris didn't flinch. He stepped closer, his gaze locked on Daniel. I warned you, didn't I? I told you if you laid another hand on your mother or anyone else, I would not remain silent. Daniel's chest heaved with rage. This is my house. This is my family. Who are you to interfere? Mr. Harris's eyes narrowed. Who I am doesn't matter right now. What matters is that I know exactly what you're hiding. And if you keep this up, Daniel, I will make sure the entire world knows too. Linda froze, her mouth falling open. I felt my blood run cold. What did he mean? Did he know the secret too? Daniel's face went pale. His fists clenched at his sides. You don't know anything, he stammered. But his trembling voice betrayed him. Mr. Harris leaned forward, his tone low and dangerous. Don't test me. I have proof. And if you think chaining your mother makes you powerful, wait until you see what true power looks like. The silence that followed was thick, almost suffocating. My heart pounded as I looked from Daniel to Mr. Harris, and then to Linda, who was clutching her wrist in pain, her eyes begging for someone to finally expose the truth. Finally, Daniel laughed bitterly. But it wasn't a laugh of a man in control. It was the laugh of someone cornered. You want to know the truth, Mother? He spat, his voice cracking. He grabbed a photograph frame from the shelf and smashed it on the ground, shards scattering across the floor. He pointed a trembling finger at me. The son you think you know doesn't exist. And the truth Linda is so desperate to tell you will destroy everything you believe about me. I gasped, my body frozen. Daniel, what are you saying? But before he could answer, He lunged toward the kitchen drawer, yanked it open, and pulled out a large kitchen knife. My heart stopped. He raised it high, his eyes blazing with madness. "If anyone tries to expose me," he shouted, "then tonight, blood will spill in this house." Linda screamed. I stumbled backward, nearly tripping. Mr. Harris took a step forward, his body tense like a predator about to strike. The knife gleamed under the light as Daniel's hand shook violently. His eyes flickered between me, Linda, and Mr. Harris. And I realized my son was ready to do the unthinkable. The knife trembled in Daniel's grip, his knuckles white, his chest heaving like a raging bull. The room was frozen in terror. Linda crouched on the floor, shielding her face. I stood pressed against the wall, my body trembling, and Mr. Harris, tall and unyielding, stared straight into Daniel's eyes. "Put it down," Mr. Harris ordered, his voice calm but edged with steel. Daniel shook his head violently. "No, you don't understand. If she finds out, it's over. Everything is over." My breath caught. "What are you hiding, Daniel? What secret could be so terrible that you'd raise a knife against your own mother?" He turned toward me, his eyes wild, almost broken. "You don't want to know, Mother. You think you do, but once you hear it, you'll never look at me the same again." Tears blurred my eyes. "I already don't recognize you, Daniel. The boy I raised would never chain me, never call me a dog, never threaten me with a knife." My voice cracked. "So, tell me, what could possibly be worse than this?" For a moment he hesitated. His hand trembled. The knife lowered slightly. His lips parted as though he was about to confess. And then Linda's voice cut through the silence. "Tell her, Daniel," she shouted through tears. "She deserves to know what you've done." Daniel's head snapped toward her. "Shut your mouth." But Linda's sobs turned into fury. She stood, her voice shaking but strong. "Margaret, listen to me. Your son, your precious son, has been stealing from people. Not just money but lives. He's been running with dangerous men, men who would kill anyone who got in their way. And the money he spends here, the life he pretends to live, it's all built on crime." The words struck me like lightning. My knees buckled, and I clutched the edge of a chair. My Daniel a criminal? My Daniel, the boy I had sacrificed everything for? Daniel roared, his face red with rage. He lunged at Linda, raising the knife high. But before he could strike, Mr. Harris moved like lightning. With one swift motion, he grabbed Daniel's wrist, twisting it until the knife clattered to the ground. Daniel howled in pain, struggling, but Mr. Harris's grip was like iron. "You don't scare me," Mr. Harris growled. "I know exactly who you've been dealing with, and I have the evidence to bury you." Daniel froze, his eyes widening in shock. "Why you? You don't know anything." But the way his voice cracked betrayed him. Mr. Harris shoved him back, the knife now lying useless on the floor. He turned to me, his voice softer. "Margaret, everything Linda said is true. I've been watching him for months. The chains, the anger, that was only part of it. Your son has been living a double life. And the people he works with, they won't hesitate to destroy anyone who gets in their way." The room spun. My legs gave out, and I sank into the chair. My son, my flesh and blood, entangled with criminals? Linda sobbed into her hands. Daniel stood frozen, his chest heaving, his eyes darting wildly, as though looking for a way out. And then, without warning, he bolted for the door. "Daniel!" I cried. But he didn't stop. He flung the door open and sprinted into the night. Mr. Harris chased after him, his booming voice echoing into the dark. "You can't run from this forever, Daniel. I'll bring you down before you hurt her again." The front door slammed shut, leaving only silence. My body shook violently as I pressed a hand against my chest. Linda sank to the floor, crying softly, whispering over and over, "It's over, it's over." But I knew it wasn't over. Because somewhere out there, my son was running. Running with secrets. Running with rage. Running into the arms of dangerous men who could swallow him whole or send him back to finish what he started. And deep down, a chilling thought gripped me. If Daniel came back, he wouldn't be coming back alone. The night swallowed Daniel's figure as he disappeared down the street, his footsteps pounding against the silence like a war drum. My chest heaved as I clutched at the armrest of the chair, my body trembling from the storm that had ripped through our home. Linda crouched on the floor, sobbing uncontrollably, while the knife Daniel had dropped lay just a few feet away, glinting in the faint light. Mr. Harris returned moments later, his breathing steady though his eyes were sharp and restless. He shut the door firmly, as though sealing us away from the danger outside. "He's gone," he said in a low voice. "For now." "For now," I whispered, my throat tight. "You mean he might come back?" Mr. Harris's jaw tightened. "Margaret, your son is not just running from us. He's running straight into the arms of the men who control him. Men who will use him, then discard him when he's no longer useful. But worse," his eyes flicked to the window, scanning the shadows. "They might come looking for you." My heart plummeted. "Me?" Linda's sobs grew louder. "He'll tell them everything.
He'll tell them you know.
He'll tell them Harris has proof. They'll come here, Margaret. They'll come here." The room grew colder. Every creak in the house felt like a warning. I forced myself to look at Mr. Harris. "You said you had proof. You said you've been watching him. Why, Harris? Why my son? And why do you care what happens to me?" For the first time, Mr. Harris looked uneasy. He rubbed his hands together slowly, then sat across from me. His deep voice softened. "Because, Margaret, I know what it feels like to lose someone to those men. I once had a son, too." His eyes glistened, but he held my gaze firmly. "They pulled him in just like Daniel. Promises of wealth, power, respect. By the time I realized what was happening, it was too late. He was gone." I gasped.
"Gone.
"Dead," Harris said flatly. His voice cracked only slightly on the word. "They killed him when he tried to break free. And I swore on his grave, that if I ever had a chance to stop them from destroying another family, I'd take it. That's why I moved here. That's why I've been watching Daniel. And that's why I can't let him drag you down with him." Tears blurred my vision. Harris had carried this pain silently, and now he was risking everything to protect me. But Linda spoke up, her voice sharp with fear. "So what now? If Daniel brings them here, we're finished. They'll kill us all." Her words made the air heavy. I could hear the ticking of the clock on the wall, each second like a hammer striking. Before I could answer, a sound echoed outside, a car engine, faint at first but drawing closer. Headlights swept across the curtains, then vanished as the vehicle pulled to a stop right in front of the house. My stomach twisted. Linda grabbed my hand, her nails digging into my skin. "Oh God, they're here." Mr. Harris rose silently, moving to the window. He peeked out, then his body stiffened. "It's not Daniel alone." His voice dropped into a growl. "He brought them." My blood turned to ice. I staggered to my feet, clutching Linda's hand. "What do we do?" Mr. Harris didn't take his eyes off the window. His broad shoulders tensed as he whispered, "Stay quiet. Stay low. And whatever happens, don't let them see your fear." Then came the knock. Heavy, demanding, ruthless. The sound reverberated through the house like a death sentence. And then Daniel's voice, muffled but clear through the door. "Mother, open the door. We need to talk." The knock came again. Louder, crueler. It rattled the door on its hinges, as though the wood itself wanted to shatter. Linda clung to my arms so tightly my skin burned, her eyes wide with terror. Mr. Harris stood like a soldier by the window, his jaw set, his fists clenched. Then Daniel's voice cut through the silence. "Mother, open the door. They just want to talk." The way he said it made my stomach twist. His voice no longer carried the tone of a son speaking to his mother. It was cold, mechanical, almost rehearsed. I wanted to scream at him, to ask how he could drag strangers to my home, to the very place where his family lived and breathed. But my voice was gone. Mr. Harris motioned for me to stay back. He whispered, "Don't answer yet. Let me see who we're dealing with." He slid to the edge of the curtain and pulled it back just enough. The headlights of a black car glowed faintly, shadows of 3 men visible inside. They were built like mountains, their outlines heavy, their movements sharp. And standing at the door, illuminated by the porch light, was Daniel. Daniel, my little boy who once ran through this same house with scraped knees and sticky hands, now wearing a hardened face that looked nothing like the son I raised. Margaret, Harris said, his voice grave. This isn't a friendly visit. If you open that door, they'll take control. You'll lose everything. Let me handle this. But the banging grew fiercer. One of the men outside shouted, his voice deep and mocking. Open up, old woman. We know you're in there. Don't make us break it down. Linda whimpered. I pressed her against me, stroking her hair even though my own hands trembled. My heart hammered against my ribs, louder than the knocking. Then Daniel's voice again, louder, angrier. Mother, if you don't open this door, I swear, they'll come in anyway. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. The sound of his words ripped me apart. This was my son, begging on behalf of wolves. Did he not realize what he had become? Did he not realize that he was leading his own mother to slaughter? Finally, I found my voice. I stood and shouted through the door. Daniel, why are you doing this? Why are you bringing these men to my home? There was silence. And then his answer, low and sharp, because if I don't, they'll kill me. The weight of his words crushed me. My son was not just a criminal, he was a prisoner. A pawn trapped in the jaws of men who thrived on fear. Mr. Harris slammed his hand on the table, his voice a fierce whisper. Don't believe him, Margaret. He chose this path. He had a choice every step of the way. But I looked at Harris, then back at the door, and my heart tore in two. I can't just leave him, Harris. He's my son. Harris shook his head. And if you open that door, you'll lose your life. Do you understand? Sometimes love means standing strong, even when it hurts. The pounding grew louder. The wood began to crack. Splinters fell onto the floor. They weren't going to wait much longer. Harris's eyes darted to the window. His voice dropped. Stay here. Both of you. Before I could protest, he slipped out the back door, vanishing into the darkness, like a shadow. My heart raced. I pulled Linda closer. The banging became thunderous, until finally, the front door burst open. Daniel stumbled inside, his face pale with panic. Behind him stormed 2 towering men in black coats, their eyes scanning the room like hunters spotting prey. The third stayed by the car, keeping watch. Well, one of them sneered. His voice was rough, dripping with menace. So this is the famous mother. The second man stepped forward, cracking his knuckles. She doesn't look like much. Just another old lady. Why's she so special to you, boy? Daniel's eyes darted to me. He looked torn, trapped between loyalty to them and the love buried deep in his heart. Don't touch her, he whispered. The men laughed. Don't touch her? You brought us here, didn't you? What did you expect us to do? Have tea with her? I felt faint, but I stood tall, forcing my voice not to shake. Whatever quarrel you have, take it with me, not my son. The leader smirked. Lady, you don't get it. He belongs to us. And now, so do you. Just as one of the men reached for me, the back door slammed open. Mr. Harris stormed in, a phone in one hand, his other hand gripping a heavy iron bar. His voice boomed like thunder. Police are on their way. I told them everything, names, crimes, evidence. If you don't leave this house now, you'll be in handcuffs before sunrise. The men stiffened. One cursed under his breath. The leader glared at Harris, his jaw tight. You think you're clever, old man? This isn't over. They shoved Daniel aside, retreating toward the door. But before leaving, the leader turned back, his eyes boring into me. You'd better watch yourself, lady. If he's not ours, he's nothing. Then they vanished into the night, the roar of their car engine fading until silence filled the house once more. Daniel stood in the middle of the room, his face buried in his hands. He sank to his knees, sobbing like a broken child. I didn't know what else to do, he cried. I was trapped. I was scared. I thought if I gave them you, they'd let me go. My heart ached as I looked at him. Part of me wanted to embrace him, to remind him that he was still my son. Another part of me recoiled, remembering the chain, the knife, the betrayal. Mr. Harris placed a heavy hand on my shoulder.
His voice was firm.
Margaret, this is your moment. You can either keep saving him from the mess he creates, or let him face the consequences that might finally set him free. The lesson hit me like a wave. Sometimes, love doesn't mean shielding your child from pain. Sometimes, true love is letting them fall so they can learn to rise. I looked at Daniel, my tears blurring him into the boy I once knew. Son, I whispered, I'll always love you, but I can't protect you from yourself anymore. The flashing lights of police cars illuminated the windows as sirens wailed in the distance. Daniel's eyes widened as reality struck him, and as the police stormed in, Harris's grip tightened on my shoulder. It's over, he said quietly, but it's also the beginning. I closed my eyes, my heart breaking yet strangely lighter, because I knew the truth now. No matter how much it hurt, sometimes the greatest act of love is letting go. Life lesson. Sometimes love isn't about protecting people from their mistakes. True love means having the strength to let them face the consequences, even when it breaks your heart. Because only through pain and truth can real change and freedom begin. And that was how it all ended. A story of betrayal, pain, and the strength to let go. But tell me, what would you have done if you were in my shoes? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit the like button if this touched you, and don't forget to subscribe so you'll be the first to hear the next shocking story.